Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellen and I love making videos about the spiral or the wheel of the year or the yearly cycles we are going through. And I want to take the opportunity now in December to make a small little video about the Winter Solstice, and especially like talking a little bit about a very common myth. That is that Christmas, or the old Christmas, or Yule, is originally a feast of the Winter Solstice. I kind of want to take a moment here to debunk that, so that you can make better informed decisions about what you want to celebrate and why do you want to celebrate it and what are your intentions, right? Not telling you what to do, but giving you the information so you can decide better what to do. Getting straight to the point of this video. It is a very common myth and I see it a lot. I see it everywhere on the internet. I see a lot in pagan communities, neo-pagan communities of course. I see it a lot in Wiccan movements or people who are coming from Wiccan perspectives. And that is the myth that before Europe or Germanic or Northern Europe was Christianized, what we celebrate now as Christmas was actually a feast of the Winter Solstice. And it was just moved a few days and fixed into the calendar to accommodate this Christian agenda. But was it really so? Now, the answer is no. So the Winter Solstice and Yule is absolutely not the same thing. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit why, and also where did it run wrong? Like, where does this myth come from? Why does everyone celebrating Yule, and if you are a neo-pagan, you are celebrating Yule this time of year and you're celebrating the Winter Solstice. Both Yule or the Julablot and the Winter Solstice are very nice places to feast, and that's very nice occasions to celebrate and set specific intentions and honor specific things, but they are not the same. So it's actually, I'm just giving you more reasons to have a double feast and not just have one feast. So it's only good things, only good things. So where did it went wrong? And mostly it went wrong in translation. Literally, it's a long time ago, so we went to several rounds of translation. And another reason where it went wrong is because we shifted calendars a few times. And the calendar system we used to use here in Northwestern Europe is not the same calendar system that we are using today, okay? So this is the two reasons where I kind of went a little bit lost in translation, and why these feasts are now kind of like put on the same pile, while originally they were two very different things. So I'm going to start with translation and how it was explained that what was the right time for Yule or the Julablot or the offering of the feast of Yule. It is supposed to be midwinter. Now midwinter gets a little bit wrongly interpreted as the Winter Solstice, right? While midwinter actually literally means in the middle of winter, which is not in the end of December at all. It's more in the middle of January or even a little bit more towards February, according to our calendar today. Now, the second reason it kind of gets a bit lost in translation is because we shifted calendar systems. We used to have a lunar solar calendar. Now, this was a calendar system based on the cycles of the moon and the sun. Now, as soon as Europe got Christianized, we got first the Julian calendar and then we got the Gregorian calendar, which we are still using today. And that is why certain dates that used to be movable because they were following the cycles of the sun and they were following the cycles of the moon, meaning that they were moving dates because the moon phase is not every year on the same space, right? So it's a date that was constantly moving. And by accommodating a new fixed calendar system that did not follow these astrological events anymore, we kind of fixed these dates in a certain point in the year on this artificial calendar we are now following. And that is why certain celebrations got a little bit pinned in a space and time that is not really reflective of where it used to be. Now, to properly start the discussion about midwinter, the solstice, the darkest night, and the feast of Yule, Julablot, I actually have to start with a very known feast and celebration, at least here in Norway and Sweden and Scandinavia, and that is the feast of Santa Lucia. Now, the feast of Santa Lucia is nowadays fixed on the 12th or the night of the 12th on the 13th of December. Now, who is Santa Lucia? Now, she is actually like kind of a random South Italian young lady who died some sort of noble Christian death. And she was kind of like picked to replace. And that person was not Santa Lucia. This person was called Lucy. And the night of Lucy was called Lussinatten, or the night of Lucy, translated to English. She was a scary ass woman. She was a night spirit. She was a very scary night spirit. And she would roam the nights. She would punish people. She would catch people. And she would make sure that in all the farms and all the houses, Christmas preparations, or the preparations for the Julablot, for Yule, were really nicely ongoing, that you were really properly already preparing for the Yule feast. So she was making sure of that. She was going around in the night and making sure of that. People were wary of going outside. She was a really scary figure, a really scary witch kind of figure, a nature spirit. Like almost like a roaming troll woman. That was the real nature of Lucy, Lussinatten. And she was celebrated on the darkest point of the year. Really in the winter, like the darkest winter nights. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Lussinatten, even though it's now like pinned on the 12th of December, was really the darkest night of the year, and such at the winter solstice. She was making sure Christmas preparations, you were doing like a good job there, you were preparing well. She was very scary, witch-like woman, like roaming the nights, like punishing people. People were scared to go outside on the darkest night of the year. Like reconstructing these things, we have so little information, and there's people way smarter than me, like making all sorts of conclusions and doing research, but still we have very, very little information. And what we are left with as neo-pagans today, we are kind of like left to pick up the crumbs and trying of like making some sort of sense for ourselves. What makes sense for us energetically to do what at which time of the year? Now, back to the lunar solar system, it makes a lot of sense to follow with the cycles of the sun and the moon. When would you kind of like celebrate, or what was the real darkest night of the year? Yes, it could be the winter solstice, because there's a lot of stone structure around the earth that are really exactly lining up with this astrological dates. But also, you would celebrate darkness and darkest nights at new moons. So for me, it makes a lot of sense to place Lussinatten, or the darkest night of the year, at the new moon around the winter solstice. And is one, energetically, spiritually, traditionally, is a very beautiful date to celebrate for very different reasons. And I would celebrate Yule, or the feast of Yule. Now, when historically, probably, right? We never know really 100% for sure with these things. But when was most probably Yule actually celebrated? Now, it was defined as the first full moon following the first new moon after the astrological midpoint, that was the winter solstice. So if you calculate that for this year, Christmas or Yule, we would celebrate this year rather late, almost the latest that is possible by doing this kind of calculations every year. We would celebrate on the 1st of February, which lies smack in the middle of winter, exactly on midwinter. And we would celebrate like surviving, like please let the light come back. We are celebrating actually the returning of the light at the winter solstice. That is like the meaning of the winter solstice. The light is conquering, or the light is victorious over the night. But at the Yule feast, we would kind of like say thanks to nature spirits, say thanks to the gods, say thanks to our family, say thanks to our ancestors. The survival of winter, please, that the spring and the summer and the harvest of the year to come may be good. So we are already like giving thanks and asking for having a really beautiful year ahead. We are also now in the coldest point of winter. Usually in the end of December, it's not the coldest of winter at all. The deepest, like the coldest, the iciest moments of winter time, they lie in February, sometimes depending on where you are on the globe, even in March. So we are now in the middle of winter time, the coldest moment of the year, but the light is already back. It makes, especially if you live a little bit more higher up north, these 4 weeks or 6 weeks from the winter solstice to the calculated old lunar solar date of Yule makes a lot of difference in the light. It is not so dark anymore at all. So the light already has conquered, the light already kind of has come back, but you're really asking for a good year, a good harvest, thanking the earth, thanking the ancestors, thanking the gods and nature spirits, and asking for a good year to come. Now at the end of this video, I kind of really shortly want to talk about like the different energetics of these two different celebrations. And at the winter solstice, we are very much like in this in-between land, or this no man's land between death and alive. We kind of like left our body through the ground, and we're celebrating themes of like death at a few weeks before, like 6 weeks before. And we were around at the time of the winter nights, around the time of Álfablót. And we were kind of like, you can imagine that we were kind of like leaving the body all the way out through the crown, and now we are kind of in this in-between land, and before we will re-enter ourselves through our roots, and we will sprout again as new fresh seeds in February. So it is like this continuous cycle of death and rebirth, and we are kind of like living through again and again and again every single year. Now we are in the middle, we are smack in the middle of death and being reborn. It's this little pause, this little like holding off the breath before we restart a new cycle. And this little pause in between death and rebirth is such a sacred and necessary time. It is a wintering, like a little pause, a little wintering, a little like grabbing your courage, or wrapping your courage, growing your magnetic field, growing your boundaries, re-establishing a sense of self, the retreating into the self to do that before we will sprout again in February. Now at Yule, we have already taken the first steps into the rooting, into the sprouting. We are already one cycle further along into celebrating the birth of the sun again, the birth of the seed, the birth of the new year, the start of the new year. Okay, so you can kind of see that we are very close energetically, but at the winter solstice, we are in a break, we are in a pause, we are in the resting, while actually at the Yule feast, we already right at the beginning of a fresh rebirthing cycle. We are already with our toes into the new year, and we can already kind of see through the first light of spring, we can already kind of see where we are going. So it is very, very different. Now it's for you to decide, of course, what resonates with you. What do you want to celebrate at which time? What does feel right? Which moon phase of which point in the solar calendar feels right for you to celebrate? But I do want you to make an informed decision. You are either celebrating the solstice or you are celebrating Yule. But in my perspective, and also historically, those two things don't really happen at the same time. All right, I do hope you enjoyed this shorter video. Now, before I go, here at the end of the video, I do kind of very shortly want to speak about Christmas traditions that are very known in the world today, that are actually coming from very old, or can be traced back to very old pagan traditions. Most of these things are kind of very well known, but it's still kind of fun to talk about them. And And I can kind of start with tracing back the original Santa Claus. Now, there's a lot of cultures today in the world who have like a Santa Claus tradition. Also in the Netherlands and in Belgium, they are doing this really weird thing of celebrating St. Nicholas. And then you have Santa Claus and Father Christmas elsewhere in the world. Now, this character can actually really be traced back to Odin, who had the name of Yule, literally meaning like Christmas Odin or Yule Odin. And he kind of was honored and celebrated around this time of year. And he and also Thor, his son, they would go around in red clothing. Now, this is confirmed. We have grave finds actually with a red clothing representing this. And it's not only like the name of Odin, like Yule, it's also kind of like the image. Like you have the images of the carriages. So also Thor was said to go around in a carriage dragged by goats or like billy goats. Right, so then you have like this kind of analogy already going on. You have like tales about the wild hunt. So you kind of have like the red clothing. Now, red is not only like representing the fire, the red is possibly also coming because at Yule or Christmas time, there would be, of course, at the winter night also, there would be slaughtering of the animals that would not make it through the winter. And like this ritual blood was kind of smelled on the walls. So you have like the red from the blood, like the honoring of like saying thank you to these animals, like almost feeding you through winter time. And you had the red clothing celebrating like or representing the fire. You had the carriage. So yeah, really like getting really into the Santa Claus image, aren't we? Then you also have the gift giving. Now there wasn't really like so much gift giving, but it was said that Odin would like give like small gifts of nuts and dried fruits to his warriors. And then lastly, you also have the evergreens. Now, evergreens and evergreen plants have a really high status and a kind of like ritual status, not only here in the north, but also in the whole Celtic world. Several or different evergreens were celebrated, were decorated with, were brought into the house, were hanged on the doorway of the house, were celebrated out in nature. So we are kind of getting full circle here. With everything, the red clothing, the evergreens, the gifts, the whole Father Christmas thing going around. So I think it is rather fun to see that. It's kind of funny to me that even after 1,000 years or almost 2,000 years of Christianization, we are still like these pagan traditions are so deep in our ancestry, in our roots, that even people who are believing that they are doing really Christian things are kind of still like carrying out these very old traditions. So that's kind of beautiful to see. It's kind of fun and beautiful to see. Now, anyway, thank you so much for watching this small and kind of fun video for me to make. I do hope you will stick around. I have another interesting video planned toward the end of December, where we will go a little bit deeper into the whole pagan calendar of 2026. I'm trying to kind of reconstruct a little bit about what it's going to be, how it's going to look like, why it's going to look the way it looks. So that's going to be super interesting. So I do hope, please stick around for that one. Thank you again for watching my beautiful video here. And then I will see you next time. Bye bye.